Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to episode 79. Can't believe we got to 79 of Talking Asperger's with Andrew. My name's Andrew Marsh, and I'm autistic. I have Asperger's syndrome. That's my representation of autism. And I found out quite late in life that I had autism. I was 51, so that was 8 years ago. But everything fell into place. It made sense of why I reacted and behaved in certain ways, why other people behaved in certain ways around me, and how sometimes I didn't fit in, or a lot of the time I didn't fit in the groups that I was in, whether that was family, whether that was at college or university or at work. And I used to be a geologist. And what I do now is I work with employers to help them better manage people like me, autistic people, people with Asperger's syndrome in their businesses. Because I've got 23 years of lived experience of being a geologist, being different without knowing why. My geological career was all before I knew I had Asperger's, although I always known that I was different. So I use my experience that I've had. I think, okay, imagine putting myself back in that situation and saying, okay, Andrew, you've got managerial control or managerial responsibility for a group of people, and one of them is just like you were back then. They have Asperger's. How would you manage them? How would you get the best from them? Because ultimately, that's what a business is about. If you get the best from the people that you have working for you, they're more likely to be more productive. They're more likely to contribute better to the business. The business does good products, provides its clients with good services. It makes money. That money is fed back into the business and fed back into the employers through annual wage rises and things like that. So my aim, my job is to help businesses manage someone like me, see if they can do it better. And I've got a 7-step program that I go through that does just that. It's very low cost. It's virtually no cost because it's things that you can do that don't cost a lot of money. They're more like processes that you can implement to get the best out of someone who is autistic. So today's webinar is all about, it's a spectrum. What does that mean? Interesting that, because your first experience of autism, my first experience is when I was beginning to think that I may have Asperger's syndrome, and I started doing the logical thing, because I've got this thing that I'm talking to you on here, a computer, stick it into your favorite search engine. Do I have Asperger's syndrome, or what is Asperger's syndrome? And you will get all sorts of information, some of it good, some of it bad, some of it misleading. But what I want to do today, I want to start off at the very beginning of that process and define what Asperger's syndrome is. And this is exactly what I did. I went online, I said, what is Asperger's syndrome? And I got a definition. I've written it down on this card, and I want to read it to you because it's really important that I get this right. This is a clinical definition of Asperger's syndrome by what the doctors say. Okay? Asperger's syndrome is an autism spectrum disorder, one of a distinct group of complex neurodevelopmental disorders characterized by social impairment, communication difficulties, and restrictive, repetitive, and stereotypical patterns of behavior. Interesting, isn't it? Now, if you were an employer and that was your first experience of Asperger's syndrome or autism in general, you wouldn't be sitting there thinking, great, I've got to employ this person. They're exactly what I want. That definition is very clinical. It says nothing about the abilities of the person, what their skills are, what their strengths are, what they should shine at, what they do brilliantly well at. And I don't like it for a number of reasons. One, it uses the word disorder twice. Now, I don't know about you, but when I hear the word disorder, one of the things I think of is, oh, someone's got a disorder, there must be something wrong with them. And they use it twice in that 30-word definition. So that's wrong. To me, I have a condition. I have an autism spectrum condition, and my representation of that is Asperger's syndrome. I tend to just shorten that to say I have Asperger's syndrome. But some people prefer to say they're autistic. I tend to come out with I have Asperger's syndrome before I say I'm autistic, but it doesn't really matter. What it matters is that definition says nothing about the abilities of the person. And it's not encouraging you to think, oh, I want to know more about this. They've got skills. And it's a spectrum. It uses the word as an autism spectrum disorder. And I want to just touch on that just for a little bit. Because spectrum, what does spectrum mean? You might think, and you may have heard some people say, oh, I'm a little bit autistic, or, oh, I know someone and they're a lot autistic. And you might think that it's linear. Where are we? We're over there. 0 to 100%. No, it's not linear in one line. Let's take this kebab skewer, which I hope you can see. Let's move it there. It's got a blunt end and it's got a sharp end. Let's call the sharp end, where are we? 100%. And let's call the blunt end 0%. You push this through a grapefruit and you're going to get about a third of it sticking out one end, a third of it in the grapefruit, and a third of it sticking out the other end, approximately. And if you imagine that that was a trait of Asperger's syndrome, and you shove that through a grapefruit, you think, yeah, that's okay. This person fits down there. They're at 12%. That doesn't mean anything. Imagine if you had 10 of these skewers shoved in the grapefruit. Imagine if you had 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 of these skewers shoved in the grapefruit, and every single one of those kebab skewers was a different trait of Asperger's syndrome or autism. And every single person on the spectrum, every autistic person or every person with Asperger's syndrome sits differently on every single skewer. So that my 10,000 traits and representations of it is completely different to the next person you meet who has Asperger's syndrome. And that's really, really important. One of the things we say within the community is, when you've met one person with Asperger's syndrome or autism, you've done just that. You have just met one person with it. And the next person you meet will be completely different. They could be completely different. They might be similar in certain aspects, and we do have some commonalities amongst us, of course, but that person might be completely different. I'm a very ordered, organized, logical, focused person. So one of my strengths is organizing data. Now, you might think, what a chore. But actually, I really enjoyed that when I was a geologist, because we would have lots and lots and lots of data, particularly on a big project like a motorway scheme. A motorway scheme might be 13 kilometers long, eight miles or something like that. And that's quite a length. And you've got an awful lot of information from a number of different sources. And you've got to make sense of it. You've got to understand what it is, rather than just, it's in those 4 boxes that we keep at the back of the thing behind the curtain, and no one ever goes near them. To me, finding out what's in those 4 boxes is a joy, because I can get my teeth into it. I can start to understand all of this different information, and I can characterize it. I can classify it. I can give it a code. I can identify it. I know that if I'm going to call it a code A, might be factual information. Code B might be laboratory testing. Code C might be historical information, like old maps. Code D might be mineral extractions. It might be whether there's any quarrying that's been there in the past, or whether there's been any mining for coal or ironstone or oil shale. So all of these things you can categorize and you can classify, and you can come up with your own way of finding out what's in those 4 boxes. And you make a spreadsheet, you make a list, and you circulate that to all the team members so that they know, in box 2, folder 2, you're going to find this piece of information, rather than, as has happened many times in the past, the director just comes off the phone and goes, I need this borehole now. Okay. Well, you know where the stuff is because I circulated. I haven't got time for that. You can go straight to the box 2, folder 1, bam, there's the information you want. Go straight to your director, because you know he's not going to have the time or the inclination to go through this list and fathom out, where is this stuff I need? You're going to want to be able to have that information to hand. Boom, there it is. That's the information. That's where it is. Please put it back where you got it from when you finished with it, and don't leave it on your desk. If you need to take a copy of the 3 sheets of paper that you need to look at, I would prefer that you did that, and then put the original back in the box so that it's where it is, so that someone else who wants to come and use it is not going to find it missing. because the director might have 10 different jobs and 10 different priorities of things that they're doing that day. And suddenly someone else makes another phone call. That becomes more of a priority. That thing gets left on the side of their desk. The cleaner comes in, they knock it over, and it gets put back in the wrong place, etc., etc. And suddenly that piece of information has gone missing, has been misplaced. And it might find itself appended to the back of a letter on a completely different job. And no one then is going to know where it is. So one of my strengths is organizing data. I love spreadsheets. I love lists. I'm a list type of person. But coming back to what I said, it's a spectrum, and everyone sits at a different point on those 10,000 skewers. And if you think of it like that, that's what the spectrum is. Everyone sits differently at a different place. The person I'm sitting next to might be autistic, and they might be sitting quite high up in the order skewer. Their skewer for order, they might be sitting quite high up. They might be very the same. They might have the same number. There isn't really a number, but you know what I mean. They could be quite high in having order and organization. They might be the same as me, but they might be completely different when it comes to focus, or when it comes to numeric analysis, or when it comes to social interaction, or when it comes to presenting to 20 people in a room. Yeah, those are struggles for some of us. Some people are great at it. Some people struggle. So everyone sits at a different place on those skewers. Excuse me just a moment. And it's really, really important that we all understand that. Just as neurotypical people like yourself and the people in your company and in your business, and most of them, they're unique for what they are. You will have people who are great at numeric work. You will have people who can type at 120 words a minute. You will have people who are great at analysis. You will have people who are great at planning. You will have people who are great at organizing resources, like the team of 10 people, keeping them gainfully occupied throughout the course of the week and the month, and programming that. You have people who do all sorts of different things. And that's what makes a good team, is by having different people with different strengths and different skill sets all working together for the common good. That's what you want from a team. That's what you want your leader to inspire. Notice I said the word leader, not manager. Managers, the things we had in the 1960s, who stood there with clipboards and stopwatches and going, you were 2 minutes late for this and you're a minute late for that, and I'm going to write you up and you're getting disciplinary for this, that, and the other. We are a long way beyond that now. We are looking for leaders who inspire their team members to be the best that they can be. And if that means that you have to manage someone or different people in your teams in a different way to get the best from them, then that's what you do. We've got to get away from one size fits all. There's the memo, do that. The person, like myself, for example, who would like short, sharp instructions. I want to do this. I want it to pick up this point, this point, this point. I want a conclusion. I want an image. I want a graphic. I want a visual representation of it, and then go on to the next point. And I want this, this, and this within that next point. No point giving me a 30-page briefing document, because I won't be able to find what the priorities are. I won't be able to find the structure that you want, because you haven't given me one. I will come up with my own structure, but if you haven't said, make sure you cover this point, and this point in more detail than that point, and that point, I won't know. And so I will give them all the same level of work intensity. That might not be what you want. You have to be specific. And that's what we need to be able to do. So everyone on their skewers and grapefruit sits at a different place on however many skewers you think you have in your grapefruit. It's a great analogy. I like it because I can see it. I'm a visual person, and a lot of people on the spectrum are visual people. We like to see things. I can see numbers. If you give me some complex mathematical problems that I could do, I actually see it in numbers. It's as though I've got an invisible blackboard in my head, and I can see myself writing out the solution and go boom, 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 bam, there's the answer. And I can see that in my head as I'm going through the problem, and I might look at a certain problem and go boom, and might be able to do that very quickly. Bang, straight there's an answer. And some people look at me and go, "How did you know that? How did you do that?" I just did because I could see it. So some people on the spectrum are very visual. They like to see things. They like to be given things in a visual way so that they can understand what you're asking them to do. And they will then present that back to you in a visual way so that they can understand what they've said and how they've represented it. And there's the figure, there's the diagram, there's the photograph, there's the spreadsheet, there's the pie chart, or whatever it is that represents the information that you're presenting. All of those things are important. But it's really important that we understand that everyone sits at a different point on all of those skewers. Yes, we'll have some commonalities amongst us, but sometimes we won't. There are other neurodivergent traits that come with Asperger's and autism, and they kind of get picked out by themselves, which can lead to confusion. And some people are just this without having the autism as well. But that can be ADD, ADHD, can be dyslexic, dyscalculant, it can be OCD. Now, I'm probably quite a bit OCD as well as Asperger's, but I know people who have Asperger's who are quite ADHD, and they can't focus on anything for more than 5 minutes, and it drives me nuts. It drives me nuts. How can you not focus on that thing that you've been given to do? Stick at it. Because, oh no, but that's just over there, and that, oh, that's interesting as well. Let me look at that. Let me look at that. Oh, that's interesting as well. I can't work like that. I have to have boom, one thing, and I will dedicate my day to that thing. I'll be absolutely focused. Boom, railway line focused, straight into the distance. That's me. You will see me at somewhere on that railway line going off into the distance doing that one thing. But other people, oh no, do they do a bit of this, they do a bit of that, a bit of that, and they get nothing done. It drives me nuts. It drives me absolutely potty that some people have really struggled with ADD and ADHD in being able to focus and sit and do one thing at a time. But that's who they are. That's their makeup. That's how they are. Their brains are made up, and that's how the representation of their neurodivergent traits is represented. And we're all different for that, and that's really really interesting. So that's a little bit about the spectrum. What have I got down on my notes? Yep. So that if you have someone in your business, in your teams, and you think, do you know what? They're struggling. Or you're actually thinking about it in a different way. This person isn't doing what I want. That's usually what you think, because you've had comments from other colleagues. This person isn't doing what I want. They're not listening to what I'm telling them. They're trying really hard to comply. But if you're not clear, specific, and precise, and you're asking them to make an interpretation of what they think you have asked them to do, that might not be what you want. Might not be fully what you want. They might have missed an interpretation. They might have missed an inflection that you didn't fully convey to them. So clarity of instructions is really important. Be very, very clear about what you're asking someone to do. But someone's name might keep coming up. This person is difficult. And what happens is, when you have your management meetings, how's it going? Yeah, going fine. We did well on this project. We got that. That was on time. That was delayed because of X, Y, and Z. But we got approval from the client, and we're moving forward, etc. But this person's name keeps coming up. It's that person. It's Andrew. And when that cascades itself up the management chain by a level or two or three, and when it gets to that point, the people there probably have very little idea of who that name is, who the person behind that name is. They're just going, Andrew, again? This is the third month in a row this name has come to me as someone who's difficult or problematical, or they've had to go over their work again. the person 3 levels up isn't going to know who you are unless you're very lucky. So they're just seeing, what do we do with this person? But actually, the issue is they're not getting clear, specific, and precise instructions, and they're not being given the opportunity to ask questions, and they're being dismissed when they say, I just need to speak to you about such. Oh, I'm too busy, too busy. Go away, get on with it. Just get on with it. Just go do it. Just going to give you a little tale of back in my geology days. I worked on a large motorway scheme, that 13-kilometer roads project I told you about a little earlier. And I just started working for this company, and I was given the daily job of running this project. I had a project manager above me. And the problem was my project manager. He struggled with effective communication. He wasn't clear in what he wanted. And it was very difficult working for him. And he was managing several projects. And I remember sitting at my desk, and where was he? He was over to the left of me. And to the right of me was another colleague who was working on one of these other projects. And my colleague was questioning him about something that he was working on. And the conversation got heated. It got very heated, and they were right in front of my desk. And I obviously couldn't avoid but seeing, hearing, witnessing what was going on. And the way that it ended was the project manager said, I don't care, just do it. And he threw his fountain pen across the room at the colleague, and it twanged in the carpet right in front of my desk. Now, I don't care how frustrated you are as a manager, how busy you are, how much stress you're getting put under, and how much pressure you're getting put under by the directors and people above you. You cannot manage people that way. That is wrong. That is the wrong way to get the best out of anyone. I don't care, just do it. Basically says, I've given up. I'm not interested. Go away. Where's the leadership there? Where's the want to inspire you to do good work? All you want to do is get whatever it is that you're doing for that person done quickly, get it out of the way, and go and work for someone else. You don't want to do that. You don't want to be sat having to work with that person for 40 hours a week for the next 6 months. Oh, horrible. But that's what I had to live with, was working for this person. This was the big job, and it was at least 6 months worth of work, probably nearer 9 or 10 by the time we'd done all the processes that were needed. So how can you do that? How can you believe that shouting and swearing and throwing things at your colleagues is the way to inspire them to do good work? There may be issues. That person may have had issues. Absolutely right. Their stress may have made them very irritable and irascible. But that's up to the directors and their managers to say, okay, this person is struggling. How can we help them? Rather than just brush it under the carpet, get on, get it done. I'm busy as well. You have to inspire them. You have to guide them. You have to sit down with them for 10, 15 minutes, half an hour, and say, okay, I've noticed you're struggling with something. Why don't we get a cup of tea? One of my cures, or one of my greatest achievements, is to sit down with someone with a cup of tea and say, how can we help you with this? This is the problem. This is how I see it. How are you getting on with it? And what can we do? And where have you got to? And talk me through your thought process. Talk me through where you've got to and where you were going to go. That is one of the biggest tools that you can ever have as someone working with other team members, whether you're the team manager, the team leader, whether it's someone from another team who's come and said to you, because they're not getting direction from their manager, said, look, I'm really struggling with this. They're going to go nuts if they find out I've talked to you. So can I talk to you for half an hour? Sure. Let's get a cup of tea, sit down, have a chat. And help see if you can guide that person in a better way of doing something. Just clarify some things that they're not certain about. That's how you move jobs forward. That's how you give the member of staff the skills to go on and do the next piece of work or take that project a bit further. It's the same with people who are autistic and have Asperger's. They will have different needs, different strengths, different challenges. We all have challenges. If you have someone who has agoraphobia in your workplace, then it may not be the best thing to do is to go send them out onto a site. Big, wide open spaces. No, they can't cope with that. Or if you do, have a colleague go with them and say, we're going to go onto site today and I'm going to stay with you and I'm going to stick by your side all the time. But I want you to help me with this because I need your input. And I think if I'm with you, you can ask me the questions and we can talk about what we see on site and we can take it from there. But I'm going to stick very close to you. I'm not going to go wandering off. I don't want you to go wandering off. If you want to go somewhere and look at something, let's go there together so that we can address and look at what it is that you want to look at. And then we take it from there. That's how you try and help someone who's got agoraphobia, for example. Someone who's depressed might not want to get involved in all the day-to-day stuff that's going on, but just try and find out what it is that they're working on today, and if they're happy knowing what it is that they've got to do, or do they need a 10-minute sit down with a cup of tea? An awful lot of problems can be solved by sitting down with someone with a cup of tea for 10 or 15 minutes. Excuse me just a moment. When I got to have more experience when I was a geologist and had some seniority, I tended to work for myself. I was freelance, and so I would go and work for a company for 3 months or 6 months or a year or whatever. And it was usually me just running that project. And look, we've got this project. We're overworked and understaffed. Can you just take this? Basically say, can you take this project and deal with it for me? Yes, no problem. Have I got any resources to help me with drafting up drawings and things? Yes, no problem at all. We'll deal with that. Let me know in advance and we'll sort that out for you. No problem. Thank you. So when those situations happened and I was then briefing my client about where we were, the easiest thing to do is to get a drawing of the project, sit down, mark it up, highlight, get colored pencils. I was a great one for colored pencils. For coloring this area here was okay. It's colored blue, that's green, that's red. This is the problem area. Highlight it, put some annotated speech bubble type things on the drawing so that people could look and see and understand what's happening. Much easier than just talking to someone for half an hour and they're losing the thread of what's going on. If you've got a visual image, you can point to it, point to the aspect or the particular problem that you're dealing with. It's here, it impacts with that, etc. And then you discuss it. And if you have the right people around the room who are involved in the project, you very quickly get to understand the problem and you get to understand how it impacts on other people in other teams. And you come up with a way forward that everyone buys into and everyone understands and they go forward from there. So really important to understand that autistic people with Asperger's syndrome might be in those teams. And so they're probably very visual. Give them the opportunity to have their own drawing that they've marked up on the things that they're working on and go a little, can you just brief me about how you're doing just for a minute? Just brief me for a minute on what you've done. I see you had a drawing with you. Can you show us what that is? Talk to me about it. And they will go through that with you and say, yes, I understand. Thank you for that. You're giving them ownership of a part of the project, gives them feeling of responsibility, makes them feel valued. Really important things. And they feel as though they're part of the team. Even though they might have their own social interaction struggles. Back to the description. Remember what it said? Characterized by social impairment, communication difficulties, and restrictive, repetitive, and stereotypical patterns of behavior. Yeah. I'd love to meet the person who came up with that. I would love to have a conversation with them for half an hour with a cup of tea, because I might be able to change their mind on what they put in that definition. I might not, but I'd love to be able to have the conversation with the person who came up with that definition of Asperger's. We're getting towards the end of our allotted time today, but I want to close out with one very important thing. Just need a quick drink. I gave you that 30-word definition, which I've just jumped back into there and had a little recap of 1 or 2 points in it. I want to give you my 30-word definition of what Asperger's syndrome is. if you remember back to the beginning about stereotypical neurodevelopmental disorders, social impairment, and so on, this now is my 30-word definition of Asperger's syndrome. Asperger's syndrome is an autism spectrum condition characterized by unique problem-solving skills, a highly developed imagination, and a flair for innovation in design, engineering, science, computing, and the arts. Now, maybe you've never encountered autism or Asperger's syndrome before, but if you play back the first version that I gave you at the beginning, and you just recount what I've just said to you there with my 30-word definition, I know which version I prefer. I know which one says something about the skills and the abilities of the person who has Asperger's syndrome or the autistic person. This says something about what they can do. It says something about their skill sets, where they might be proficient in, maybe they might be exceptionally good at. Like Alan Turing, for example. We obviously don't know that Alan Turing was on the spectrum. He was around at or about the same time as Hans Asperger, actually, who came up with the condition, but it was years later that someone else referred to it as Asperger's because he was the first to comment on it. But although we don't know for sure, but pretty much we'd be reasonably comfortable with the statement that Alan Turing had Asperger's syndrome. Doesn't really matter, but in the context of what he was able to do, because he was a brilliant mathematical genius and he worked out the way to crack the German Enigma codes from the U-boats and high command in the German during World War II. Amazing man, incredibly gifted, because he could see things and he could invent things. He said, how can I solve that problem? What can I make that can help that find that solution? He came up with amazing things. The father of modern computing is what people call him. And other people who've been who we believe have been on the spectrum, who have equally enlightened us with their genius and brilliance. But not everyone who on the spectrum is a genius. I'm not a genius. I'm nowhere near a genius. I'm quite good at some things, and I'm getting better at some other things that I struggle with. But that doesn't make me any less able to do a job, any less able to contribute to the team, any less able to be part of a project to develop something and produce something that is good and valuable and represents your business in a good light. Doesn't mean to say I'm any less able to do that. And in fact, I might be particularly good at one or two of those things that are key to that. I might be, I might not be. I'm not saying I'm a genius by any stretch of the imagination. But we have certain traits, and sometimes those traits are quite strong. People think that Mozart and Beethoven were on the spectrum. Maybe they were, maybe they weren't. It doesn't matter whether they were or they weren't. They were brilliant musicians. And it's that understanding that everyone brings something to the table, no matter who they are, what their abilities are. They will be something in their psyche, in their makeup that makes them good at things. They might be good at their hands, joining bits of wood together and be carpenters and joiners and can work in construction sites because they can see things and fix things and are great at doing those things. But it doesn't have to be cerebral. They could be great with their hands. They could be great at drawing things. They could be great at music and creating music or art in other forms. All of these things are things that people have who aren't autistic, but some of them are autistic. Some of them do have Asperger's syndrome. And if you are in management and if you are an employer and you want to know more about how to get the best from people with Asperger's syndrome or autistic people, please get in touch. You've got my website just above my just above my shoulder there, aspergersmatters.com. That's my website. You can get me at andrew@aspergersmatters.com. It's my email address, or on the website there is a contact form. Please feel free to use it and get in touch. I'd love to have a 30-minute free consultation, no obligation, to sit and see if I can help you in some way with managing Asperger's syndrome in your business. Because if you get it right, those people will flourish, they will shine, and your business will be better for it. And surely that's what you want from business. Sorry about the background, just going a bit Do lally there. Sorry about that. That's the curtain behind me. But if you want to know more about Asperger's syndrome in the workplace, please feel free to get in touch. I've got my 7 steps program that I'd love to talk and discuss with you and see how I can benefit and how I can help you. It may just be that you want someone to come in and do a half an hour talk, 20-minute, half an hour talk at one of your business lunches to your project manager, your project management team, or your C-suite. I'd welcome that opportunity. So my name's Andrew Marsh. I'm the resilient Asperger. I'd welcome the opportunity to talk to you. But if you have any questions, please feel free to get in touch. And keep a lookout on LinkedIn for Friday afternoon, which is when I usually post what next week's topic will be about. I don't know what it is yet. I'll need to have a look at my notes and see what inspires me over the next couple of days to talk about next week. But that's all we have time for today. It's been a pleasure being with you. And if you're watching this on replay on YouTube, please like and subscribe and comment to my videos. It helps me boost my followers. And if I can help someone in any way, even with just a comment that they've made on one of my YouTube videos. All of my videos for these webinars are on my YouTube channel. So there are 79 of them. I'll be placing this one on my YouTube channel tomorrow. So that's all for me for now. Take care. See you next week.